My name is Yashraj. I am a final year student now at Ahmedabad University. I'm pursuing my BTech in Information and Communication Tech. I was the summer analyst at Goldman Sachs this summer, where I was working with their risk management and trading team to work on their next generation platform. I have been a community guy since quite some time. I was a DSC lead at Ahmedabad University, the coach of campus chapter president too. I think your courtship chapter is organizing this one. I was a secretary of the programming club as well, so I've been very active in communities. I think I have done more than 30 events for my community, and then slowly transition to be a speaker for other communities. So I think this is my 13th or 14th talk. I have also done a podcast with Hacker Earth, which was about building a tech portfolio. Apart from that, I do backend development, competitive programming, which is what you're here for. So 5 stars at CodeChef expert code forces. आजकल तो बहुत लोग 5 stars हो जाते हैं, like, but back in my my second year it was a big deal. Apart from that, I have also done a bit of research. So I have submitted a research paper, and that is currently under review. Like, we were working on it since the past like 16 months or so. So hoping for the best there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about me. Like, this session is something like, I've assumed that I'm talking to people who know a bit of CP, and they're not very familiar with the C++ standard template library. So there will be stuff which you might know already. There might be stuff which you don't know, but I've just tried to be exhaustive in a way that I've tried to cover functions which, or you can say library functions which are very common in the world of CP. I hope this session becomes like a single place where you can sort of like study SQL easily. So first and second year is good. Like, that's what I was expecting. Even third year might work. So basically, back in my day when I was trying to learn C++ SQL, I asked my seniors, "Hey, I want to learn this. How do you do it?" So he just told me, "Geeks for Geeks pe jaake padho." And if you open Geeks for Geeks, you realize that it has such a long list of library functions, and most of them you don't even require when you're starting with competitive programming. So what happens is, like, I, as a kid who was in my first year, like, I did not understand कि like इतना सारा नहीं चाहिए. So I just went like Geeks for Geeks लेके बैठता था, पढ़ते रहता था. I would get confused like anything. Like, what is an iterator? What is the difference between an ordered map and an unordered map? Uh, like, very confusing questions. And to be honest, if someone had done a bit of a hand holding to me at that point and told me that, hey, like, you don't have to, so yeah, like, as beginner programmers we make a lot of mistakes, right? Like, you don't have to focus so much on the syntax. You just have to grasp the basics and get things working for yourself, and then you can sort of figure things out as you go along. So that is something I learned after making mistakes, and I've just tried to make a compilation of what I think is important as a beginner. So as you can see, like, this cheat sheet is all we are going to cover. I don't know how much of it will be able to cover, but I will be sharing this PDF with you once the session is over. I'll just send it to Fawad, and he should be able to Fawad, sorry, he should be able to like, get it reached to you. So this is everything I think you need for like your first 6-8 months in CP. When it comes to STL, like, you don't need more than this. If you are here, my objective for you is to tell you that what a brief overview of what exists in the C++ standard template library. You'll probably appreciate today why developers use C++ for competitive programming, and what all lies there, and what are the bare minimum things that you need to know. You don't really have to know C++ in depth at this point. So yeah, I hope there are no questions. If there are, yeah, reading docs are definitely, man. It's such a pain. I have wasted a lot of time in just like, this is a very typical tier 3 problem, where we waste time in digging the wrong rabbit holes. Like I have been so stupid in my first year that I read the Python documentation. I was trying to read the documentation end to end. That was so stupid of me. And those are the kind of mistakes we make because we don't have a lot of seniors to um, channel our energy or to help us do the right. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. And Batana guys, feel free to interrupt me. Feel free to use your mic to speak in between if something doesn't make sense, or if you think something needs to be taken again. If I'm going too slow, if I'm going too fast, anything, please do tell me, because the session is for you. So if you get something out of it, like, then the efforts of the organizers and mine are worth it. So yeah, let's get started. So the first like the first STL that you should be concerned with, and this is something you're going to use the most often, is a vector. And I'm very sure if you have done some CP, you must have used it um, somewhere. मतलब कहीं ना कहीं पे vectors तो use किए ही होंगे. So what is a vector? A vector, like, would someone like to answer that, or should I just maybe move on?
It's a dynamic array.
Yeah, exactly. Like that makes a lot of sense. Like a vector is basically a dynamic array. That's all we need to do. So yeah, thanks for that. That was the guy with the fancy DPS. I forget now. Suhan, yes. So what we are going to do today is maybe try doing some basic operations with the vector, with a set, blah blah blah. So a vector is basically a dynamic array, and why do I need that? Why do I not use an array? Simply because um, this gives you a lot of functions which will be very helpful in writing code. So I can do a lot of fancy stuff with this. Like with an array, you're restricted, right? Like you have to define the size of the array. Doing simple operations is hard. Like you cannot resize the array very easily. You cannot push elements behind the array. You cannot insert something in the middle of an array very easily. It's possible, but it's a pain. And this basically takes a lot of effort off your shelf at not a lot of extra cost. Like arrays are definitely faster, but for most of the things you will be fine. Like you will not get a TLE because of using a vector, not an array. So um, this is how you initialize a vector. I can also tell that, hey, like if I just wanted to deal with it like arrays, I could have said that let's say my array is of size 5, and that would create a vector which is of size 5 for me. And maybe I could have just done some uh, so vectors, you can access vectors using indices just like arrays. So I can do something like this, and this lets me iterate through the vector basically. um do I have iron enabled? Give me a sec. Yes. Yes. So I can just I should have done a C out as well to make it clearer for you guys. So, yeah, guys, if this is too basic, please do tell me, because I'm really starting from scratch, because I don't know how much of it you know, how much of it you don't know. Is there? No. Okay. So pretty much like an array. Like we didn't really do anything, nothing like new. You can go a bit fancy by maybe initializing a vector with a fixed value, something like this. And if I do this, every element is -1. So this sometimes helps in CP when you want to maybe work on a problem with a graph, and you want to initialize something with -1 to ensure that it's not a visited array or something like that. Like that's something I could think of at the moment. Yeah, but you have these kind of applications. If you're not sure about the size of the vector, that is also okay. You can define it without the size, and you can insert elements at the back using pushback. And this is something which is going to be very helpful, because this is something we need to do very often, and this is not costly. Like this on an average takes constant time if you understand a bit of time complexity. So pushing back elements without worrying too much about the size is okay in CP. Like you might encounter a situation where you want to create an array and you don't know its size. For example, you have to return an array as the answer, and you don't know how long the answer's length is going to be. It's possible, it happens. And you can access the size of the vector using the size function. If I did something like this works basically. And so like you can treat it basically like an array using indices. You can do something like this also. There is a fancy way to do some of these things which are actually faster, as far as time is concerned. Like if you use something like lead code, you will actually see a lot of time difference when you do these. Basically, when you use iterators, and you don't really have to. When it comes to these standard functions, you can just let C++ do the magic using for each loops. So you could have done something like this: that hey, if you knew that I have a vector of size 5, you could have use the auto keyword, which determines that what kind of iterator this is in this case. Uh, when you have an ampersand, you actually get the location of. Basically, you can think of it as pointers that you get um, for the first element of a vector, and it is going to increment with the for each loop. And when you do something like this, sorry, not vi, I. Uh, when you do something like this, this actually does the job of scanning elements for your vector, but in a faster way. And similarly, this does the job of accessing those elements. Uh, yeah, I find this cleaner, and I hope there is no syntactical mistake. I'm very bad at remembering. Yeah, there is not. So this is how this is another way of doing it, and I think this is faster. Like it doesn't really matter for most of the questions, but like if someone was reviewing your code maybe in an interview, this might look cleaner because you understand that the fact that C++ actually works faster when you are dealing with addresses rather than indices. So about yeah, that should make sense. You can also go the iterator way, by the way, that you might have heard for auto it is equal to v dot begin. V dot begin corresponds to an iterator, which corresponds to the first element of a vector. Uh, v dot end corresponds to the place after the last element of your vector. Like that's how conventions are in C++. And when you do something like this, uh, you have you got the iterator. So when you want to access the element, you have to use the star operator. I think it's a star operator, yes. And this should do the same thing for us. I hope that makes sense. Was there anything I have to? So this is exhaustively mentioned in the doc. Yeah, maybe a small thing which might help you. Suppose in some case you had to decide already that these are the elements of the vector. You could also do something like this. This lets you initialize elements, and then you can do your pushback and stuff in case that's required. But I realized this is also often helpful. So if we did this, yep, 23. Uh, did someone
Uh,
unmute
is,
themselves? Yeah,
yeah,
sure, sure.
is it possible to like have an enumeration like one to ten like directly?
Um, Maybe, man. I don't know. Like these libraries are actually very vast. So there are resources like CPP reference and stuff which you can use to. So I think there was like I think the IOTA function did this. So I'm not sure, man. But yeah, I think IOTA did this job. I saw it in some code forces editorial. But yeah, this is possible. As far as I remember, this is possible.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Insert is another like API which lets you insert an element at some place in the vector. So suppose if I did something like yes, this should modify a vector. Yep. So because I chose v dot begin, it went to the first place. If I had done something like v dot begin plus one, you can add on iterators. You cannot subtract, but there is a trick if you want to do it in the reverse way. I'll come to that. So yeah, this actually brings it here. So this uh, it's confusing for beginners because sometimes it's hard to get a grasp of what iterators exactly are, but you can just think of them as an abstracted way of handling pointers in C++ because that's what exactly happens under the hood. And you should be fine. You should be fine to begin with. Like my goal really in this session is to get you started with writing code rather than understanding what goes under the hood because that will not really help you much at this point. Like you have to understand complexities, of course, but not the internals. At least not for STL. So this lets you do this. What else should we do? Yeah. So there is one thing. Uh, I'm sure many of you must be knowing this, that the inbuilt sort function works directly with vectors. You just have to specify the range. So if you just wanted to sort the entire vector, you could have this, and then so this would do the job. You can also partially sort arrays. Like maybe if I had done something like this, how many elements do you think this will sort? What do you think will be the answer of this?
Sorts the first four.
1, 2, 4, 5, and 3.
Okay, let's see. It's 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. Like, it actually sorts the first three, not the first four. But yeah, like yeah, I think you guys got the concept. Cool. That was great. You can also deal with multi-dimensional vectors, and this is true for almost pretty much in everything in STL. Like you can make a map of a vector, you can make a vector of a vector, you can make a vector of a map, you can make a vector of a set. Pretty much a lot of things are possible. So that's something very cool. You can make a vector of a vector, and this will basically be something like a 2D array. If you wanted to, if you knew the size, for example, that suppose it's a 3 cross 4 vector, then you can actually initialize that as well. Like in this case, you'll have to give a constructor of a vector in the second argument. That is basically the, like for 1D vector, this was the initial value, right? So for a 2D vector, the initial value for every uh, row is basically a vector. So this is how you do it. Like if it is a bit confusing, you can just not think too much about it right now. So okay, this will also, this is how you do that. If I wanted to print this, I think like dealing with 2D arrays is, I think, easier with indices, to be very honest. So could do something like this. It's basically what you do with arrays. And let's see, P of I, j, and three cross four, right? So we've got three rows, 4 columns. Yeah. So really simple. Like 2D vectors you will be very helpful, especially when you're dealing with graph problems, because most of graph, like most of CP problems in graphs are mostly dealt with adjacency, like either adjacency matrices or adjacency lists. So you'll need a 2D vector in both the cases. So that is where this is helpful. We are already at 4:30. We should talk a lot. So if we talk about strings pretty much are like vectors. Like, you can think of a string as a vector of chars, pretty much in a lot of things, and they give you some extra functionality. So instead of using an array of char, a string actually gives you a lot more flexibility. So you could have done something like, hey, I had, let's see, I had something like this. I could actually use this plus equal to operator to increment strings, and I think that's not possible with arrays. So such flexibilities actually make life easier with strings, like rather than using an array or even a vector of char for that matter. So should be intuitive. What can we expect? Um, Simple enough. Oh, I think I left two spaces. How do you access the length of a string is through the length, what do you call it, the length function, the length method, and it's analogous to what size was for a vector. Simple enough. uh, If you want to scan a string, you can just directly do that with C. Unless there are spaces. In that case, you have to use getLine. So suppose we had I did not put a slash in, so the buffer actually started from the same place. So it could work, but probably spaces will not. That's because you have to use this function called getLine, which does this, like which lets you scan the string with spaces. Like, do you need to know anything much from this? No, I think pretty much. I think sort also works with strings, and a lot of what you saw in vectors works with strings. Like you can append elements in the back. You can actually do this thing also with a slightly different function. You can do sorting. You can use an iterator on strings. Okay, we did not mention reverse traversal in vectors, but what happens is if you use r begin instead of begin, uh, it gives you another iterator which points to the last element of your vector, and that iterator actually moves in the reverse direction. That's about nothing else changes. We'll probably do a problem with strings that will actually give more clarity. But yeah, it's pretty much similar. Like if you're comfortable with vectors, you will more or less be comfortable with strings. Do we have anything? Do we have any questions? Can we initialize like vector int v10 is equal to 1 2 3 4 5 dot dot dot? We discussed this on the call. Okay, someone asked this. Okay. Moving on, binary search is something you'll use very often. Like binary search has profound applications in a variety of classes of problems, and not just competitive, but across the whole software engineering domain. So I hope you understand what binary search is. That you just have a divide and conquer algorithm which works on a sorted array, and it lets you check if an element exists or not. As simple as that. We have some variations also which are also very helpful, especially in CP problems. So let's say I bring my happy world vector back again. We'll consider a sorted vector, and I want to see what this function does. So this actually, so because I'm doing this, I'm including the whole standard library. We are not worrying too much about where these functions belong. Like I think binary search is a part of the algorithms API, the algorithms header file. But for us, like we are not really concerned about that for this session. So suppose if I wanted to find if we have say 4 in this, like what do you think this should return? So yeah, like it's a boolean function. It returns false if something doesn't exist. It returns true if something exists. That's it. Like if you want to know the index and all, you actually will have to implement your own function. So yeah, this does not exist. This did exist. There are other two similar functions to binary search. And I think they are helpful. They are more helpful than this binary search function because mostly in any question you will not be asked to do a binary search directly. So there is something called a lower bound that and an upper bound. So lower bound actually will return the iterator to the value which is not less than the given value. So it's like greater than equal to. Like if I told that I want the lower bound of 4, I'm going to get 4 because 4 is present, and it is 4 is not less than 4 technically. If my vector was something like this, if I still said I want the lower bound of 4, I would get 5 because like 5 is the element which is the first element which is not less than 4. Like 3 won't make the cut, 5 will. So that is how lower bound works. If I because it returns an iterator, I will have to use the star operator probably to uh, see what results it gives me. If I get a lower bound on 4, see what happens. You get 5 because 5 is that element which satisfies the condition which we discussed. This will return 4 as we discussed. Suppose, do you want to play with it? Yeah, I think this makes the point, right? Like, what if this was the case? And if it does not find anything, it is going to return uh, v dot end. So I think if I did a lower bound on say 8, let's do something like is lower bound of 8 equal to v dot end, and I think this should be true. Yeah, it is true. Upper bound is slightly different in the way that instead of not less than, you have greater than as the condition. So in our previous case, again, like upper bound in this case for 4 would actually return 5, and upper bound for 5 would return 6, upper bound for 6 would return 7. So maybe let me just take this and let's see what plus, and they should give us 5. Even if 4 did not exist, this gives me 5. Yeah, so you can see there is a small difference, and they are very helpful. Like also, if you had say a lot of numbers having the same value, the iterator will actually correspond to the first one. Yep. Like I don't know how to maybe conceptually. There is a distance function, but okay, maybe let's not go there. But take my word for this that this is the 5 which is actually being printed, not these ones. So, do we have to discuss anything else, which I thought we should? No. Okay, we are good for binary search. Okay, we have covered 3 of them. I think 50% of what I wanted to cover is covered. So let's go to sets. Set is a very simple data structure. Set. What is a set? Basically, it's a binary search tree on the inside. If you understand, and if you don't understand, it's a data structure which lets you maintain whether or not an element exists. You can say that it's just exactly like sets that you studied in math. Actually, you don't have repeated elements, and even if you insert it another time, like it just ignores it. So if I had a set of integers, I could insert integers, and it would take it only once. So if say I inserted 5, and also the property is that you can access them in sorted order. I think that's the most important thing we should know. Iterating through set lets you iterate through them with every operation costing logarithmic time. It's basically same as iterating a binary search tree. So if I inserted 5 and then I inserted 1 and then I inserted 7, this would actually let me access the elements in sorted order. You can access elements through iterators again. I think the same syntax will work. For maps, it's slightly tricky. Let's see what we discuss. Yeah, you actually access elements in sorted order no matter in which order they're inserted. So this data structure is basically like the internals are dependent on the insertion order, but what you see on the outside is not. So this, as you can imagine, should be helpful in a lot of questions. And what else do you want to know? So yeah, you can insert elements, you can erase elements, you can erase them uh, by the value. Hmm. You can erase them by value, and you can erase them by iterator also. So if I wanted to say delete the second element, uh, no match for operator plus okay, my bad, you cannot do something like this. I think you have to use a different function for that. Let's do this. and this should do the job. Also, you can search for an element if it exists or not. So I can do something like s.find 7, and what this function actually does is, if it is not present, I'm going to get s.n. Otherwise, I'm going to uh, get an iterate. This should be false because the element exists. Suppose if I took something like 3, which does not exist, this will obviously be easy enough. And uh, what else? Yes, so erasing we discussed, finding we discussed. This function is also very helpful. Uh, Sometimes when you're copying elements of the set and you want to see, because playing with an empty set is going to give you exceptions. So it's not empty, obviously, as we can see. Yeah, like there are set is slightly complicated than vectors to handle, especially iterators. Uh, but for most of the applications, like you just have to be comfortable with inserting, finding, and deleting. That's pretty much everything that's required. And for just for the proof of concept, if I inserted 5 again, it will not matter because it was already there inside. Yes, so that is pretty much it for a set. We don't really want to go in a lot of depth because for the purpose of this session, I actually want to show you more functions rather than going in depth for a single one. Yes, maps I think are super helpful. Interviewers hate maps because maps make your life very easy. But yeah, you can shamelessly use them in CP, like, because you're just concerned about getting the answer right. So what's a map? A map is just a key value matching, you can say. If I tell you a key, you tell me what value is associated with that key. Very simple. And this very simple idea has profound applications not just in CP but in the entirety of computer science. And if you get time, do maybe watch some lectures or something about how hashing works, how red black trees work. I have personally watched hashing in some detail. It's a fascinating idea. The concept of amortized analysis and everything. It's a beautiful idea. If you're not studied, please do. It's very fascinating, and it has very surprising applications also. Like even in load balance, you will see an application of hashing. And when I saw that, I was odd. Like wow, like that's when you finally realize the appreciation of why we are studying what we are studying. So yes, a map can be from any data type to any other data type. You can have a map of a vector of int to an int also, but let's for simplicity consider maybe for the while that map of int. You can do anything. Like you can do map of int to a vector of int. This might help you in graphs, by the way. And maybe uh, map of vector of int to int is also possible as far as I remember. But yeah, anything is like pretty much a lot of things are possible. There are some rules, but mostly what you want to do, you can do. So if I say that m of 1 is 5, it doesn't matter. M of 2 is 4. And if I am going to say what is m of 1, it is going to tell me what is m of 1. As simple as that. And yeah, maybe think of a CP question where you had to preserve indices of every element, and you had to then do something which changed the order of elements in an array. Then maybe you could have done something like this where you preserve the indices, and then you could access them with one call. So this basically you can think of in a way that if maintaining indices is challenging, or if representing your data in this format is more beneficial, you can do something like this. So Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and this is mutable. Like if I did m of 1 is equal to 7, it is going to change. And if you access some element which did not exist, suppose if I do a C out for m of 3, what do you think should happen? You'll actually get 0. That's how maps work. So what you saw right now was actually an ordered map, which is a red black tree in the back, and this you also have an unordered map, which pretty much has the same API as an ordered map. You can do everything, pretty much everything that an ordered map can do, but the way they are constructed at the back is different. So for different applications, you should utilize different data structures. So uh, an ordered map, as the name suggests, maintains everything in order at the back, and an unordered map does not, because it's a hash table. So there is an internal hash table, and that is going to break the sorted order of your data structure. So you can say that accessing elements is faster in unordered map because hashing works uh, in constant amortized time, but like you will lose the order of elements if you iterate through that map. You are going to see any order which might not be sorted, it might be sorted. An ordered map will preserve your order because it's a tree, but in that case accessing, iterating, everything is mostly logarithmic. Like there is a bit of an overhead, but pretty much it's logarithmic. So say you have to do a lot of random access. For example, in your question, say it's an interactive problem, you have to do some random access. Unordered map is the way to go, because it's as fast. You're concerned with access is you don't want, like, the rule of thumb probably is order. If you are not concerned about the order, go for an unordered map. It's pretty much the best choice. If you want to iterate in a sorted order, then you have to go for an ordered map. You don't have an option. So that's the difference which is summarized here. So if I had an unordered map, just to show you, should not think any of these. It doesn't. And how do you iterate through? You can use the iterators again, and also you can use for each. For each actually looks very cleaner according to me, but in this case, the time complexity will not change. So if for since you have two elements now, unlike vector and set, like you will probably be concerned about both the key and the value. So they are denoted by first and second. Um, um, what did I do a syntactic mistake? Should it do this operator? Yeah. Okay. My bad. My bad. Yes. Sorry. I get confused in these operators. Yes. 2417. If it was just a map, um, did we change this? Why should it not print any form? Um, this 30 thing happened because when you access this element in an ordered map, it actually inserts that in your data structure itself. But okay, I have done something wrong. If anyone realize, please do tell me. Otherwise, this actually will be something I'll have to look at. Why did we not? Okay, we did. I think here, like there is a missing slash in this, or is it not?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Let's check. Yeah, okay. There, like I got confused because there was not a slash. So this as you can see is in perfect order because it's an ordered map, and this might not be in order because the data structure inside it is different. Like it's in reverse order. It need not be reverse ordered as well, but you get the point. If you guys are curious, please do see how pairs work. Pair is just as the name suggests, like you pair two things together, and it becomes another data structure. Like, hey, it's a pair. That's it, and you can do everything that you want, like a vector of pair. And that's possible. So Qt, it helps a lot of times. Like suppose if you wanted to sort this, like having a pair helps a lot. Like you don't have to write your custom sort function. Stacks queues, they queues a double-ended queue. Very easy APIs. It will just take a read or a YouTube video. Do check out priority queues as well. Um, if you don't understand what's a priority queue, you can say it's a queue which lets you define a priority key, and like the rest two are very slightly advanced, like multi-set and multi-map. I have never used them in any CP question I came across, but advanced people do use that, or maybe it helps you. I don't know. Unordered set and a set are like analogous to unordered map and a map. So do check these things out maybe if you get time, if you're curious, if it helps you. Um, we'll maybe do a couple of questions, one question or two questions. And if you guys want to ask anything in general, which is not even related to this session, I'll be happy to spare like, some time in the end for that, or maybe we can use that to do a question. Like, that will be really up to how do you want to do it. Okay, sorry, there is a lag. Okay. So it's a fairly simple question. I saw like I actually requested the organizers to help me with the question, and they gave me this idea. Oh, there is a solution. Sorry, cheating. So given two strings S and T, return true if T is an anagram and false if it is not. What's an anagram? An anagram is basically you can say that two strings are anagrams of each other if they have if they use the same characters the same number of times. Like if I could just shuffle S and give you T, they are anagrams. That's it. So I hope you guys did not see the solution in the right side. But yeah, like how do you think we should use this? Like how do you think what data structures will we use to solve this? Like obviously you can see strings. So what else do you think? Like what should we do to solve this problem? Cool. So the map is going to correspond to from a character to its frequency. So the map of char to int. Yeah. I can iterate through strings using the for each loop because I'm not concerned about indices here. I could just say MC++. I'll need another map for other string. So I have two maps which have the frequencies, and now actually I have to compare both these maps to see if they have the same. I could iterate through both of them and do the job, but turns out the C++ actually lets you do something like this also, which is basically like it will do the job of like comparing the key value pairs of both the maps, and if they are the same, it works. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So if we use the first test case, what let's see. Okay, this worked. We use all the example test cases. Cool, this worked. If we submit, yeah, this works. As simple as that. There is actually another way of solving this problem, in my opinion. When I was just looking at it, you could actually sort both the strings also, and then you compare them one by one. Like if they have the same length, and all the elements corresponding are same, because sorting, like every anagram has to have the same sorting, right? So that would also work. So maybe try that out. Like, like once you're done with the session, maybe try that approach and see which is faster. Let's do one more. This is, I think, slightly tricky, but yeah, again, it's an easy one. So we have a list of integers which is sorted in ascending order. We want to square them and we want to give the output in sorted order. Very easy question, but yeah, let's see what we can do. So if I had -9 -2 0 2 3, I would want 0 4 4 9 81. So obviously I can square everything and sort it, but yeah, do we have better approaches in mind? I just wanted to see how it works. As you guys are thinking, let me maybe implement the blind solution, the easy solution. Okay, we are at 5. We are at 5 p.m. Yes, guys, anything?
You could think of brute force, but yeah. Is there a better way?
Brute force as in?
Yeah, the one that you're doing right now.
Yeah, this would work. This would definitely work. A slightly better way is there, and that's what the hint was also telling us. I don't think we'll have the time to implement it, but I would really want to discuss it. Anyone? The hint is merge sort. Like, what does merge sort do? Like, you have to do something similar. So you have what you can do is take two vectors, one having the positive elements from this, one having negative elements. So basically, have to split the vector at a point where you get the first positive or zero element, and then you can uh, square both of these, reverse this one. So you will have 0 4 9, and the reverse square of this, that is 4 9, and then you will have two sorted arrays which are to be merged. So you use the merge sort logic where you use two pointers, take the smallest one, increment the pointer, take the smallest one, increment the pointer, and then you will get a sorted array without sorting. So why this is faster is because you will not have the sort operation there. But yeah, actually the exact time will actually depend on the implementation specifics also. So it's possible that you get a slower speed also. But yeah, the asymptotic complexity will be better there. Cool guys, yeah, thanks for attending.